Hey guys, and welcome to the table. Today, we're going to be discussing some tips and tricks to ensuring your team has a good foundation heading into Teamless Tuesday. Now, keep in mind we're over 60 days away from the season, so it's hard to dive into specific players, especially cash cows, but this video should give you a good idea of what makes a player good for fantasy. Alright, so let's first talk about team composition. You should be aiming to get about 5 to 7 known guns or keepers in your team to start the year. So, what actually makes someone a known? Well, typically, someone who is classified as a gun will confidently average above 50 for this season. These players are typically above 700k in price. However, some can be found for less, and those are known as cut price keepers. The rest of your team should be filled with cash cows and mid-rangers who you expect to have 10 points of value. Now, what do we mean by 10 points of value? Well, to have 10 points of value, a player must average 10 points above his price. To work out how many points a player is priced at, divide his price in dollars by the point multiplier, which this season is 14.3k. The reason we look for 10 points of value is as the season goes on, we will want to upgrade as many of our players to knowns as possible, and to do so we need some more cash. So since we will want to get our total squad value to somewhere at least around 14 million, we need our cashes to make roughly 140,000 each. Now it should be noted that keepers don't need 10 points of value to be worth selecting in your side, since the goal will be to not trade them out for the entirety of the season. Although, it's always nice to pick someone who you think will increase their price over someone who you think will simply maintain it. And guys, if you're liking the video, be sure to check out the Discord in the description for more discussion and more advice. It's always great in there. Always good tips there. Now, a big tip is when thinking about what known guns to select in your starting side, you should consider their position and if they have any additional value. In terms of position, you should mostly aim to have your guns in the hooker, in the mid, and in the half positions. These are your guys like your Cameron Murrays, your Harry Grants, and your Nathan Clearys. Now, edge and wing fullback guns, such as David Feeder and James Tedesco, are also good options if they present value or the position doesn't have a lot of clear cash cows. Center keepers such as Joey Manu should be considered last due to their historically low averages. Although you shouldn't be planning to trade out any of your guns, meaning you can't directly take advantage of any of their price rises, those who seem to be underpriced are still ideal, as it means you'll be getting them at hopefully their cheapest price. Some more points to consider when choosing your knowns are if they have dual position and when their buys are. Dual position players can be incredibly valuable throughout the season, especially at the start, and thus including them in your team is always a good idea. Although there aren't too many fantasy relevant players with dual position over 700k to start the year, players like Brandon Smith, who should get to keeper status this year, are always a good option and should be included in your sides. Now in terms of buys, although it shouldn't be a main determiner of who to include in your side, if you're struggling between two guys, it could be a good distinguisher. Now, this isn't a recommendation of either of these players, but if you were thinking about choosing either James Tedesco or Latrell Mitchell, the Roosters have a bye in round 4, whereas the Souths have a bye in round 16, although both will be out for round 13 in Origin. However, that still may tip the scales in Latrell Mitchell's favour for you, as his bye is later. Now, to avoid the pod trap a lot of second year fantasy players fall into, know that it's better to go with the crowd and get burnt together than go against it and be left out of the price rises. For example, last season I wasn't too keen on Stephen Crichton to start the season, yet he came out and averaged 49.5 in the first 4 games. Luckily, I followed this advice and had Crichton in my starting team since he was the most owned player in fantasy, but if I hadn't, I would have been seriously kicking myself. Try not to plan with the attitude of, I'll trade this guy out in round 4, 5, 6 to pick up this guy. Injuries and suspensions are gonna happen. They will. And it's more important to be in a flexible position to react to these changes rather than locking yourself into a mindset of planning trades 4+ rounds in advance. Another big trap that a lot of first year players fall for is selecting a player just because they are playing in round 1, even if their role is small and insecure. Last year's biggest example was Tolutau Kula, who played 8 minutes in round 1 and then was dropped for Dylan Walker the next week. If you played last year, you'd know that those who ended up selecting Kohler in round 1 got a lucky break when he got selected again in round 4 due to injury, but nonetheless the advice is the exact same. One of the most important bits of advice that I can give you now is to try and find value in a player's role increasing, meaning minutes or becoming a larger focal point in the team. Example of that would be Christian Walsh here, Jesse Bromwich leaving, it's his pack, or a return to form, rather than expecting a player's PPM to increase out of nowhere. With the amount of transfers that have already happened this season and the addition of a new team, this is even more true than the previous years as minutes open up in teams' forward packs and spots in other positions are given to the new players. Alright, so those are my top tips and tricks for building your team heading into this new fantasy season. Remember, join the Discord in the description for more discussion and other advice. Have fun and continue eating.